The annual Butterfly Migration Festival on New Eden was supposed to be magical. Thousands of iridescent alien butterflies, each wingspan wider than a grown man's chest, would dance through the purple-tinted skies of Proximub, their crystalline wings refracting sunlight into dazzling natural fireworks. For the colonists, it was a reminder that beauty could flourish even 4.2 light-years from Earth. 7-year-old Emily Parker stood at the edge of the observation dome, her small hands pressed against the transparent aluminum as she watched the magnificent creatures swirl in their ancestral patterns. Her father, James Parker, smiled as he recorded her wonder on his retinal camera. After 15 years of military service and another 5 as a peace ambassador, moments like these reminded him why he'd fought so hard for humanity's place among the stars. "Daddy, look, that one's dancing just for me." Emily pointed at a particularly large specimen, its wings shifting from deep sapphire to molten gold as it pirouetted closer to the dome. James started to respond, but the words died in his throat. The butterfly's pattern had changed, not the gentle color shifts of natural movement, but the distorted ripples that occurred when something large passed through a cloaking field. "Emily, step back from The warning came too late. A massive shape materialized directly above the dome, its hull bearing the distinctive bioorganic curves of Zarkak's architecture. Before anyone could react, a beam of purple energy lanced down through the supposedly impenetrable shield and struck the exact spot where Emily stood. James lunged forward, his enhanced military reflexes pushing his body to impossible speed. His fingers brushed the back of Emily's dress as she disappeared in a flash of light that left geometric afterimages burned into his retinas. The observation dome erupted into chaos. Security systems blared too late, colonists screamed, and children cried as parents pulled them close. James stood frozen, staring at the spot where his daughter had been, his combat-enhanced mind already calculating the impossibilities of what he'd witnessed. The Zarkak ship shouldn't have been able to penetrate New Eden's defensive screen. It shouldn't have been anywhere near human space. The non-interference treaty had stood for 40 years. A holographic message bloomed in the air where Emily had vanished, the Zarkak script translating itself into English letters that dripped with casual disdain. Primitive species shouldn't play at diplomacy. James touched his neural implant, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. "This is Ambassador Parker. The Zarkaks have taken my daughter. They'd violated the treaty. Initiate protocol." He paused, his voice breaking as he uttered words he'd hoped would never be necessary. "Initiate protocol Prometheus. Authorization Parker 777 Frost." Around the colony, hidden quantum transmitters activated, sending his message directly to Earth through channels that defied normal physics. The response came less than 30 seconds later, routed through classified networks that hadn't been used since the last war. "Protocol Prometheus confirmed, Ambassador Parker. The ice is melting. God help them all." James sank to his knees, touching the warm spot on the dome where Emily had stood moments before. He knew what Protocol Prometheus meant. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, beneath the frozen surface of Europa, humanity's most dangerous weapons were stirring from their long slumber. The frozen warriors, living weapons deemed too volatile for peacetime, would soon awaken. As he stared up at the rapidly disappearing Zarkak ship, James whispered a prayer. Not for his daughter's safety, but for her kidnappers' souls. Because once the warriors thawed, the galaxy would remember why humanity had locked away its monsters in the first place. They weren't frozen because humanity feared them. They were frozen because humanity had mercy. The thing about Europa's ice wasn't that it was thick, it was that it screamed. Deep beneath the frozen surface, where pressure and radiation turned water into strange crystalline structures, the ice produced an endless symphony of groans and shrieks that drove ordinary humans mad within weeks. Marcus Lazarus Cruz had been listening to that song for 40 years, his consciousness flickering between death and rebirth in his cryo chamber. The ice's screams were a lullaby compared to the memory of his 1,000 deaths, each one perfectly preserved by his curse of infinite regeneration. The awakening sequence started with pain, as it always did. His cells remembered every death, radiation, dismemberment, burning, freezing, and replayed them all as his body reactivated. In the chamber next to his, Jessica Ghost, Martinez's quantum-shifted form, wavered between dimensions, her outline blurring as she phased instinctively through her restraints. "Rise and shine, monsters," a voice echoed through the facility's speakers. "A child needs saving." Marcus's eyes snapped open, glowing with residual radiation. His voice, unused for decades, came out as a rasp. "How long?" 40 years, 3 months, 17 days, the facility's ad responded. "The Zarkax have violated the non-interference treaty. They've taken a human child." Jessica fully materialized for the first time in decades, her ghostly form solidifying as rage gave her anchor to this reality. They took a child. Those arrogant bastards actually took one of our children. Around them, other cryo chambers hummed to life. The facility, disguised as a simple ice mining operation, revealed its true nature as panels slid away to expose weapons racks and combat suits designed for beings who broke the laws of physics. Marcus stepped out of his chamber, his naked body briefly showing the translucent glow of organs regenerating before his skin fully reformed. "Last time I was awake, I died testing a nuclear reactor's core, felt every atom split." He smiled, and there was nothing human in it. "Wonder if the Zarkax have anything that burns hotter." "Save the death wish for the enemy," came a new voice, sharp with authority. Commander Diana Reaper Ross emerged from her chamber at the center of the facility, her silver hair unchanged by decades of suspension. Unlike the others, her powers left no visible marks. Her ability to sense and absorb others' capabilities made her appear deceptively normal. "Status report," Diana commanded, and the facility's screens lit up with information. The image of a young girl appeared. Emily Parker, 7 years old, daughter of Ambassador James Parker. Next to it, footage of the abduction played in a loop. "They're experimenting on her genetics," Diana said, her voice tight with controlled rage. "Just like they wanted to do to us, before we showed them why that was a mistake." Jessica phased through a wall, reappearing with an armful of combat suits. "The real mistake was letting them live last time." "The mistake," Diana corrected, "was thinking peace meant we had to sleep. Unity Administrator Chen is authorizing full warfare protocols. No restrictions except one. The child comes home alive." Marcus laughed as he suited up, the sound echoing oddly as his vocal cords regenerated. "They took one of ours, thinking they'd find human weakness. Instead, they're going to learn why we chose to freeze our monsters rather than let them roam free." Diana touched a panel, and the ice above them began to part, revealing the camouflaged ships they'd hidden 4 decades ago. "Humanity tried peace. We tried diplomacy. We even tried forgiveness." Her eyes gleamed with borrowed power as she absorbed the abilities of every warrior in the room. "Now they'll remember why the galaxy feared us in the first place." The warriors moved toward their ships as Europa's ice screamed above them. They were humanity's darkest weapons, sealed away in frozen sleep while civilization flourished in peace. Now they were awake, and the galaxy would remember what that meant. The hunt was beginning. High Inquisitor Vexthor of the Zarkax Dominion had expected many responses to their calculated provocation of humanity. The activation of long-forgotten weapons was not among them. He stood before the genetic analysis chamber, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the soft blue glow of the stasis field containing Emily Parker. "Such fascinating sequences," he chittered to his assembled scientists. "The humans kept this potential hidden from us. Their children carried dormant strands we've never seen before." The main display screen crackled to life, interrupting his observation. A human face appeared. Their ambassador of peace, James Parker. The father. "Return my daughter," James said, his voice carrying none of the desperation Vex Thor had anticipated. Instead, there was something far more disturbing. Pity. Ambassador Parker. Vex Thor's mandibles clicked in amusement. Your child is participating in the advancement of science. We found sequences in her genetic code that suggest humanity has been engineering itself. Care to explain? James's expression didn't change. You were warned when we signed the treaty. Humanity's peace was a choice. Yes, your famous warnings. Vex Thor waved a crystalline appendage dismissively. We've analyzed your military capabilities. Your ships are designed for commerce, your weapons scaled down. You've grown soft in your pursuit of harmony. The ambassador's response was cut short by a priority alert. 3 Zarkax research outposts had gone dark simultaneously. The facility's AI displayed tactical data that made Vex Thor's exoskeleton pale. Energy readings that defied physical laws, spatial distortions, and radiation patterns that suggested something was absorbing their defensive fire rather than being destroyed by it. They are awake, James said softly. The ones we put to sleep because even we feared them. The ones we froze not for our safety, but for yours. New footage appeared on the screen. A human female walking through solid walls as if they were mist, leaving behind quantum-frozen Zarkax warriors trapped between dimensions. Another human, male, standing in the heart of a plasma reactor core, his flesh burning and regenerating as he systematically destroyed the facility's containment systems. Impossible, one of the scientists whispered. No organic being could survive those conditions. That's what we thought, James replied. Until we made them. Until we had to freeze them because peace wouldn't let us keep such weapons active. Your experiments on my daughter just gave us a reason to wake them up. Emily stirred in her stasis chamber, her eyes opening. For a moment, Vex Thor saw something in those young human eyes that chilled him more than the tactical reports. Recognition. As if she had been waiting for this moment. Final warning, James said. Return her. Vex Thor rallied his courage. You forget, Ambassador. We have studied human history. You care for your young. You won't risk. The facility's shields flared as something hit them, or rather someone. Commander Diana Ross floated outside the main viewport, her body wreathed in borrowed powers. Behind her, Marcus Cruz emerged from the radiation storm of a destroyed defense satellite, his skin glowing with absorbed energy. Jessica Martinez simply stepped through the hull as if it didn't exist. You misunderstand, James said as alarms blared throughout the facility. We don't negotiate because we're worried about hurting Emily. We negotiate because these warriors are so lethal. We mercy froze them to give the galaxy a chance at peace. And you just gave us a reason to thaw them out. Emily's eyes met Vex Thor's, and he saw the future in them. His species' future, humanity's future, all branching out from this moment of supreme miscalculation. They're not our weapons, James said finally. They're our monsters. And you just woke them up. The screen went dark as Diana Ross breached the facility's final defenses, her voice carrying through the whole breach. Found you. The Zarkax battlecruiser Eternal Dominion should have been impregnable. Its quantum lock shields were designed to repel entire fleets, its weapons could crack moons, and its hull was made of living crystal that regenerated damage. None of that mattered when Jessica Martinez simply walked through it all. Neat trick with the quantum shielding, she said, her partially phased form flickering like a bad hologram as she passed through 3 bulkheads simultaneously. But I've been quantum shifted for so long, I'm practically my own dimension. Behind her, frozen in mid-scream, dozens of Zarkax warriors were trapped in a state of quantum flux, not quite solid, not quite energy, caught between possibilities. Their crystalline forms reflected fragments of light from dimensions humans weren't meant to see. Marcus Cruz took a more direct approach to the facility's outer defenses. The Zarkax fired their primary plasma cannon, a weapon that could vaporize small cities. Marcus walked through the beam, his body simultaneously burning and regenerating, laughing as radiation filled his cells. You know what's funny? he asked through a mouth that kept rebuilding itself. Every death makes me stronger. Every burn rewrites my cells to be more resistant. He reached the cannon's barrel and punched through it, his fist glowing with borrowed energy. Want to try killing me again? Commander Diana Ross floated above the chaos, absorbing and redirecting the abilities of both her warriors and the defending Zarkax. Her silver hair whipped in an unfelt wind as she processed power that should have torn her apart. Emily Parker is in the central laboratory, she announced through their quantum-entangled comm system. Her genetic patterns are changing. They've activated something in her DNA. Inside the lab, Emily watched her captors with eerily calm eyes. The Zarkax scientists had expected fear, tears, or at least confusion from their human specimen. Instead, they got penetrating questions about their own genetic science. "Your species is crystalline," Emily said, her voice carrying an authority that no 7-year-old should possess. "But you didn't evolve naturally, did you? You engineered yourselves, hit a dead end, and now you're looking for new patterns to copy." High Inquisitor Vexthor backed away from the stasis chamber. The child's genetic structure was rewriting itself before their sensors, incorporating patterns that seemed to draw from the very warriors attacking their facility. "Impossible," he chittered. "The sequence modifications are coming from within her own DNA. As if humanity already carried the potential." Emily smiled. "Did you really think we put our monsters to sleep just because they were dangerous? They were prototypes. Seeds." Her eyes gleamed with new awareness. "And you just gave me the key to unlocking them." The facility rocked as Marcus breached the outer lab defenses, his body now so charged with radiation that he left glowing footprints in the metal floor. Jessica phased through the ceiling, bringing with her the unsettling sight of space-time distortions that followed her quantum wake. "The child appears unharmed," Jessica reported, her form solidifying. "But her genetic structure is exactly what we've been waiting for," Diana finished, floating through the breach Marcus had created. "The frozen warriors weren't just weapons, were they, Emily?" Emily shook her head as her stasis field flickered and died, overloaded by energies pouring from her transformed cells. "We were stage one. The galaxy needed to see humanity's potential for both peace and power. Now," she raised a hand, and reality rippled around her fingers. "Now it's time for stage 2. Vexthor watched in horror as the child who was supposed to be their key to evolution became something else entirely, not a victim, but a catalyst. The frozen warriors hadn't been awakened just for rescue or revenge. They'd been awakened to witness the beginning of humanity's next step. And it was glorious. Humanity watched in collective awe as footage of the frozen warriors leaked across the quantum net. Debates raged in every colony and settlement. Were these beings still human? Had they ever been? The images were both terrifying and mesmerizing. Jessica Martinez quantum shifting an entire Zarkax dreadnought into null space, its crystalline hull fragmenting across dimensions like a kaleidoscope of frozen time. "They're not monsters," Emily Parker's voice rang out across emergency broadcasts. "They're what we were always meant to become." The Zarkax, desperate to maintain control of the narrative, transmitted their own footage. They showed Emily in their labs, floating serenely in a modified stasis field as her DNA rewrote itself. Their intent was to prove their humane treatment. Instead, they revealed something far more unsettling. "Look at her eyes," Diana Ross commanded, studying the transmission from their assault carrier. "She's not their prisoner. She's using their own equipment to catalyze the change." Marcus Cruz stood nearby, his body pulsing with so much absorbed radiation that the ship's sensors could no longer classify him as organic. "Kid's got more power than all of us combined. Makes you wonder if this was the plan all along." The Zarkax launched their final defensive fleet, 300 ships strong, each carrying enough firepower to glass a continent. Humanity's regular defense forces prepared for apocalyptic losses. They needn't have worried. Jessica phased through the command ship's bridge, her quantum-shifted form carrying traces of every dimension she'd passed through. "You know what's fascinating about quantum mechanics?" she asked the terrified crew. "Reality is just a consensus, and I've learned to disagree." The entire fleet found itself occupying the same space as their own shadows, trapped in a quantum superposition that shattered their crystalline technology. 300 ships became an abstract artwork of fractured possibilities, their crews frozen in a moment that would never end. "This is High Inquisitor Vexthor," a desperate transmission cut through the chaos. "We were wrong. The child. She's not just evolving. She's awakening something that was already there, something you hid in your own genes." Diana absorbed the patterns of quantum distortion left in Jessica's wake, adding them to her growing collection of impossible powers. "Of course we hid it. Humanity wasn't ready. We needed to prove we could choose peace before we could handle real power." The footage from Emily's lab changed. The stasis field collapsed as she opened eyes that now held galaxies. "I can see them all," she whispered. "Every possible future, every path we could take." Her gaze found the camera. The frozen warriors weren't locked away because they were dangerous. They were preserved because they were the first. The prototypes. Marcus, now crackling with enough energy to ignite a sun, laughed. "Prototypes for what, little one?" "For me. For us. For what humanity will become." Emily rose from the ruins of her containment chamber. The Zarkax thought they were unlocking human potential. They didn't realize we locked it away ourselves, waiting for the right moment. The quantum net buzzed with new images, other children across human space showing signs of awakening, their DNA responding to some silent signal. The frozen warriors weren't an endgame, they were a preview. "You see now." Emily's voice carried across space itself. "We chose peace because we had to prove we could handle it. And now," she reached out, and reality rippled around her small hand. "Now we get to choose what comes next." Diana Ross felt new power flowing through her cells as she absorbed the patterns of humanity's next evolution. We were never monsters, she realized. We were guardians, keeping the door closed until the right moment. And as the galaxy watched in terror and wonder, that door began to open. The age of peaceful humanity was ending. The age of transcendence was about to begin. The Zarkax homeworld, Crystallis Prime, was supposed to be unassailable. Its defensive grid drew power from a captured neutron star. Its planetary shield had repelled asteroid strikes. Its surface bristled with weapons that could target individual atoms. Emily Parker stood in her laboratory prison, watching futures unfold like pages in a cosmic book. "They're coming," she said to no one in particular. "And they're bringing heaven down." The assault began with a whisper. Jessica Martinez phased an entire assault carrier through the planetary shield, her quantum-shifted form spreading through the ship's hull like frost on glass. The laws of physics shuddered as she pulled the massive vessel through dimensions it was never meant to traverse. "Impossible," the Zarkax defense minister breathed, watching the ship simply appear inside their impenetrable barrier. "Our shields operate on 19-dimensional frequencies." "Really?" Jessica's voice echoed through their comms. "I stopped counting after 50. Marcus Cruz launched himself from the carrier's bow, his radiation-charged body a living meteor. The planetary defense grid targeted him with enough energy to vaporize a continent. The beam struck, and for a moment, Crystallis Prime's night side bright as day. When the light faded, Marcus stood on the planet's surface, glowing like a newborn star. "Thanks for the charge," he grinned, his voice carrying through crystalline structures that made up the Zarkax cities. "I was running a little low after that last star system." Commander Diana Ross descended from the clouds, her silver hair writhing with borrowed power, every ability she'd absorbed from both her warriors, and the Zarkax defenses swirled around her like a lethal aurora. "Emily," she called out. "We're here." In her laboratory prison, Emily smiled. The Zarkax scientists backed away as she raised her small hands. The containment field that had held her, that she had allowed to hold her while she learned their secrets, shattered like sugar glass. "Did you know," she said conversationally, walking through the fragments of her prison, "that human DNA contains sequences that have been dormant for millions of years? Your experiments didn't create anything new. They just woke up something very, very old." High Inquisitor Vexthor burst into the lab, his crystalline form vibrating with panic. "Stop. You don't understand what you're becoming." Emily turned to him, her eyes now holding the same otherworldly power that the frozen warriors emanated. "No, Inquisitor. You don't understand what we've always been. The warriors weren't weapons. They were keys. And now," she gestured, and the laboratory's quantum computers began rewriting their own code, evolving past their creator's understanding. Diana burst through the ceiling, her form crackling with absorbed energy. She landed beside Emily, then stopped, staring at the child with wonder. "Your power. It's unlike anything I've sensed before." "Because it's not just mine," Emily replied, reaching for Diana's hand. "It's ours. All of humanity's. We just needed the right moment to remember." Their hands met, and Diana gasped as Emily's power flowed into her, not to be absorbed, but to awaken something that had always been there. The same sequences, the same potential, waiting in every human cell. Marcus and Jessica phased through the walls, their own powers resonating with the awakening. "Kid's right," Marcus said, watching his radiation-scarred flesh heal into something newer, stronger. "Feels like coming home." "We are home," Emily said, as the Zarkax facility crumbled around them, its technology unable to process the energies being unleashed. "We just forgot for a while. Had to prove we could handle peace before we could handle power." As Crystallis Prime's defenses collapsed and the Zarkax realized the magnitude of their miscalculation, Emily turned to her rescuers with eyes that saw past tomorrow. Ready to remember what we really are. The warriors, humanity's first awakened children, nodded. And the universe held its breath. On Earth, children were dreaming of stars. In lunar colonies and Mars habitats, teenagers woke with power crackling at their fingertips. Across human space, the dormant sequences in human DNA began to stir, awakened by Emily Parker's cosmic signal. It wasn't supposed to happen this fast, Unity Administrator Chen admitted, watching holographic displays of spreading evolutionary changes. "The warriors were our failsafe, our way of keeping the door closed until we were ready." James Parker stood beside her in Earth's emergency command center, watching his daughter's transformation ripple across human space. "And now your daughter has kicked the door off its hinges." The frozen warriors gathered around Emily in the ruins of the Zarkax facility, their powers evolving beyond their original parameters. Marcus Kruz's radiation had transformed from destructive force into creative energy, healing instead of burning. Jessica Martinez could now shift entire realities, not just her physical form. And Diana Ross. Diana had become something entirely new. "I can feel them all," Diana whispered, her consciousness expanding to touch every awakening human mind. "Everything we locked away, everything we forced ourselves to forget. It's coming back." Emily nodded, her small form now a conduit for energies that made the Zarkax's most advanced sensors short out in confusion. "We had to prove we could choose peace, had to show we could handle power responsibly. The warriors weren't just weapons, they were a test." High Inquisitor Vexthor, his crystalline form cracking under the strain of nearby energies, finally understood. "Your entire species, you deliberately stunted your own evolution, locked away your potential." "We locked away our power," Emily corrected, "but kept the keys frozen in Europa's ice, just in case someone like you came along and proved we needed it back." She turned to the warriors, ready to make a choice. Marcus looked at his glowing hands, power that had once been a curse now transformed into something miraculous. "What choice?" "Stay awakened," Emily said, "or go back to sleep. Help guide humanity's evolution, or let us find our own way." Her eyes held galaxies as she smiled. "It has to be a choice. It's always been about choice." Jessica phased partially through dimensions, considering. We were monsters before. Broken weapons. You were prototypes, Emily corrected. First drafts of what humanity could become. Now, she reached out, touching Jessica's quantum-shifted form. Now you can be teachers. Diana absorbed the new patterns of power flowing through human space, feeling every awakening mind. They're scared, she reported. Excited, but scared. They need guidance. Across Earth, Mars, and 100 colonies, humans were discovering abilities that should have been impossible. Teenagers phasing through walls, children reading quantum probabilities like picture books, adults suddenly understanding languages they'd never learned. It's not evolution, Emily explained to the astonished Zarkak scientists. It's remembering. We locked these abilities away in our junk DNA, waited until we were mature enough as a species to handle them. And now we choose, Diana finished. All of us. The warriors looked at each other. Broken weapons turned into keys, monsters transformed into guardians. Their powers had been curses, forcing them into frozen sleep. Now they could be blessings. I choose to stay awake, Marcus said first, his radiation now a gentle glow. These kids will need to learn control. Jessica solidified fully, more present than she'd been in decades. Someone has to teach them how to handle power without losing their humanity. Diana absorbed their decisions, adding them to the symphony of choices being made across human space. Then we teach. We guide. We protect. Emily's smile contained futures yet to come. The hard part isn't gaining power, she said, watching humanity take its first steps into transcendence. The hard part is choosing to use it wisely. And across the stars, humanity awakened, not to conquest or revenge, but to the responsibility of power freely chosen. The age of sleep was over. The age of remembering had begun. 1 year after the Zarkax incident, humanity had changed beyond recognition, and yet remained fundamentally the same. Emily Parker sat in her garden on New Eden, watching crystalline butterflies land on her outstretched hand, their wings reflecting possibilities from a dozen dimensions, still keeping an eye on all possible futures. Diana Ross asked, materializing beside her former charge. The commander's silver hair now shifted with cascading waves of absorbed power, but her eyes remained kind. Only the important ones. Emily smiled, now 8 years old but carrying wisdom of eons. The Zarkax delegation is arriving today. They're finally ready to discuss their role in the new order. Above them, Marcus Kruz streaked across the sky like a shooting star, leading a class of newly awakened children in learning to control their energy manipulation. His laughter, once haunted by countless deaths, now carried the joy of creation. Third lesson this week, Diana noted. He's taken to teaching better than anyone expected. Death taught him the value of life, Emily replied, just as quantum shifting taught Jessica the importance of staying grounded. As if summoned by her name, Jessica Martinez phased through reality nearby, leading her own group of students. Teenagers learning to navigate the multiplicity of dimensions without losing themselves. Where once she had been a ghost, barely tethered to reality, she now moved with practiced grace between states of being. The Zarkax ship is approaching, Jessica reported. They're nervous. High Inquisitor Vexthor, now appointed as Ambassador of Understanding, descended from the crystalline vessel. His once imposing form seemed almost fragile compared to the evolved humans around him. But he carried himself with new humility. We come seeking wisdom, he announced formally. Our genetic science unlocked your potential, but we never understood what we were touching. Will you teach us? Emily stood, her small form radiating gentle power. Your science didn't unlock anything. It just reminded us of what we chose to forget. She gestured to the warriors. They were our reminder that power without wisdom is destructive. That's why we sealed away our abilities until we could prove we deserved them. Around them, New Eden had become a center of learning. Former warriors, once deemed too dangerous for society, now served as humanity's most respected teachers. Their hard-won lessons about power and control proved invaluable as humanity remembered its inherited abilities. The children adapt the fastest, Diana observed, watching a young girl casually reading the quantum states of nearby atoms. They accept it as natural. Because it is natural, Emily corrected. We were never meant to be just one thing, bound to one dimension or one form of existence. We chose limitation to learn wisdom. Now we choose expansion to practice it. Vexthor watched in wonder as humans of all ages demonstrated abilities his species had spent millennia trying to engineer. And us? What role do we play in this new universe? Emily's eyes sparkled with multiple futures. The role you were always meant to play. Fellow travelers, not conquerors or experimenters, but partners in understanding the universe. She turned to the warriors. That's what they taught us. Power isn't for domination. It's for protection, for growth, for understanding. Diana absorbed the patterns of harmony flowing through the gathered humans and Zarkax, adding them to her ever-growing tapestry of shared experience. We're not monsters anymore, she realized. We never really were. No, Emily agreed, as the butterflies around her hand multiplied across dimensions, creating a display of infinite beauty. You were guardians. You still are. You just protect something bigger now. The warriors, humanity's first awakened, once frozen in ice and fear, stood among their students, their powers no longer curses but gifts to be shared. They had evolved from weapons to teachers, from monsters to guides. And humanity, having proven it could choose peace, now chose to remember what it had always been, not just a species reaching for the stars, but stardust remembering how to shine. The end was just another beginning, and the universe watched, and learned, and grew wise.